Okay, so please welcome Paul-Armand.
So, hello everyone. It's such an honor to be here in front of such an audience. Really good. So I'm Paul. I'm a web developer for 5 years, I think. Ruby developer for 5 years, and former C developer. So very interesting in performance and automation and stuff like that. I really enjoy AI and machine learning too. It's my my off time, and today I'm going to talk about my last experience as a CTO of A-Line, and what I built here, and what was my problems, and why I went from REST to GraphQL. So why are we building APIs? So building API is just providing data to a consumer, to a front end, to a mobile application. Rails give us API-only Rails engine, and it's pretty neat. And at that time, when I started the API for the big project, the ambitious project at A-Line, I didn't really know what's the best way to build an API. So I started with a JSON API, a standard JSON API. And after a few days, few weeks, it started to get messy. It started to get messy because, for example, when my front-end developer asked me, okay, in this endpoint, in the, for example, company's endpoint, I want the users to, because you know, I don't want to ask too many endpoints. It's performance. It's bad for the performance. So I was okay. I give you the users. Okay. And then after that, he told me, okay, but can I have the chats too? Because you know we have a chat, and I want to display the chats. And our endpoints, we had like 100 endpoints, and each endpoint was very custom, very fast, and I couldn't work with that. Really, it was too tiring. So after around 3 months of building very tiring APIs and stuff, I told myself, okay, let's try something else. Let's find something that when I've built an API for a project from scratch, I don't want to touch it anymore. So okay, I destroyed everything. And this is my daughter. And I discovered GraphQL at this time. So GraphQL for me was kind of a revelation. It was, okay, exactly what I needed at this time. Just don't touch your API when it's done. So it's an alternative to REST. It's only one endpoint, the GraphQL endpoints, and the consumer will ask for what he needs. And so you can query and you can mutate. Mutate is like a create, update, destroy, and other actions. And you have a concept of subscriptions too. Subscription, I will not enter in detail in subscription right now, but subscription is like for WebSockets to subscribe to a channel, and then you can perform tasks through WebSockets. So we were very entertained by GraphQL at the time, and I was looking at what has been done in Ruby for GraphQL. So thank you, Robert Masalgo, because really it was a wonderful job. Shopify had some job too on GraphQL, and for me the work on GraphQL was pretty good, but I had something to add because I wanted to get a more simple architecture of code. So I was looking at domain-driven design at the time, and I told myself, okay, what should I do? Should I rewrite some design for Rails or not? And then it came up. So I work on a gem at the time that will clean the GraphQL for me, really clean all your GraphQL architecture. So from a Rails API to a GraphQL API, and it works. I think I can enter in detail, but the best way for me to explain to you how it works, it's through an example. So let's make an example together. So as it's my first big conference in English, I want to have some feedbacks, for example. So here we have some speakers that have many talks, some spectators, and they can put comments on the talks. And maybe to sort the talks, you can sort it by tag. So this is really a simple API that I want to build. I want to be able to create speaker, create talk, create spectator, comments, and tags, and to modify it, to destroy it, and maybe to create comments. This is the main point of the subject, and to query everything very simply. So let's try to do it. So I will raise new an application. So I think everyone has done that here. I use a PostgreSQL database because it handles pretty well the UUIDs, and I find it neat when you work with front ends. So I add the gem GraphQL and GraphQL Rails API to my gem file. I bundle it. And then I create the database. So this is only what I have done on the project for right now. And then I have my data model. So I design my data model. A talk has a title, a speaker has a name, and has many talks. So you can do both ways. Either a talk belongs to a speaker, or a speaker has many talks. A spectator has a name, a comment has body, belongs to spectator, belongs to talk. And what I did is just to describe your model and have a GraphQL API automatically from that. So I just generate exactly what I did, and it worked both ways. So at first I generate a talk. And it will generate the talk, generate the migration, the model, and the GraphQL type, the GraphQL mutations for create, update, destroy, everything. When you add a speaker that has many talks, it will add a speaker ID to talk and a name, and everything will be done. Then we want to generate our spectator. So you guys. So a command belongs to a spectator and a talk. And then we have the tag that has a name and many-to-many talk, because it's a many-to-many relationship, and it handles that too. It will create the join table automatically and do a has many through relationship. It's really to simplify to have simple MVP in GraphQL. So right now I'm gonna show you the results and the code. So I'm display the video. So as you can see, now I'm working with GraphQL. I only have one controller. It's a GraphQL controller. In my routes, I only have one route, almost, that is a post on GraphQL that rejects to the method execute from GraphQL controller. And it will execute what the GraphQL query that has passed in parameter. And it will handle the authentication here. So here you authenticate your user any way you want, and you pass it at GraphQL here. Automatically, these folders has been created, so commands, speaker, spectator, tags, talks. It's like domain-driven. It's very simple. For example, if I take a comment, his type has automatically a spectator ID, a spectator, a talk ID, a talk, a body, timestamps, and ID. And everything is done, and then you have your mutation: create, destroy, update, and an input type. The input type is a type of data you send to create or to update a comment. And then you have your service, is where you work on your business logic. It's like, I don't know if I want to change the way I create comments. I just have to redefine create here, and it will automatically change the way the comment is created. So if you want to add, I don't know, payments, stuff, it's here, you code it. So you can test it very easily, and it's pretty simple. And so you have all your domains here, you have your application service and your models. Your models are as expected. I added some visibility filters in my Gem2. So here you can see that I have two methods, visible for and writable by. For example, if I want to filter the comments, I can just define here and I have my user, for example, is a spectator, so it's a spectator, so user.comments, and it will only show the comments of the user, and if the authenticate user is the spectator, then only his comments will be visible when querying the GraphQL. And then Robert Moselgo designed a very powerful engine that's called GraphQL. And GraphQL is this. And you can just test your query on the left, and you have the result on the right. So, for example, if I ask my GraphQL the talks and the title of the talks, then it will give me this data. Then if I want the ID too, I can have it, no problem. And then if I want in the talk, I want the speaker. Easily I can ask for the name of the speaker, and then I see the name of the speaker. So I had a seed, but all right. What I did too is to avoid n+1 queries. So you can see in the server here, all the queries are optimized. So you just select on your database only what you are querying. Here I want just the name of the speaker and the ID of the speakers. So it will only select that from your database, so to not overload your RAM. So that's all right. When you want to create a comment, you just do a mutation, create a comment or create a spectator. It's as simple as that. You just put here up, and then I do that, and it will create a spectator. Here I ask for the name, it's the return data. And it works here, it's insert a spectator. So everything works as expected. So I did for you, I upload it on Heroku. So this is the URL. You can try it, you can query, you can have fun with it. It's really simple. You can post comments if you want. I will check it. And that's all right for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any comment? Any question?
Hello, thank you very much for the talk. I've been actually looking for an excuse to use GraphQL for a while. But the problem I keep running to is that I don't always have the chance to destroy my JSON API and start from scratch. So I wanted to know what would be your advice, because it looks like the GraphQL entrance barrier of the amount of code you have to put into to get it work is pretty high.
Yeah, it's pretty high, but at first you can just add the GraphQL layer on your Rails application. It's really easy. You just add it. You add your types iteratively, and you don't have to basculate all of your API at once in GraphQL. You just do it resource by resource, and your front end will be very pleased to start using your new resource as a GraphQL too. So it's what I did, and as it simplifies a lot with frameworks like Apollo in front end, your front end development, front end developers will love you for using GraphQL instead of standard REST APIs.
And another question? Yeah.
If if a request comes in for a field which either doesn't exist or no longer exists, is there a known contract for returning what you can, or do you error, or something else?
Yeah, so there is many things. At first, you have access to your schema in the API. You can ask for the schema of the possible queries directly. Here I can show you a little bit, but if I get back to GraphQL, here you have a documentation explorer, and then you can see what you can query. So here I can query, for example, speakers. Speakers, I have a pagination, and what is a speaker? It has a created data ID, name, talk IDs, talks, updated that. So it's in the model, and afterward you can just have deprecated fields for a while, and then or version 2, you can have one version of your GraphQL API and /GraphQL /v1, for example, and then have another version with new types. It's possible too.
So right now, if you just tried to get something with a misspelt field name, can we see what happens? What's the HTTP code and the error payload and things like that?
If here I just put this,
yes.
It will tell me that the field tail doesn't exist on the type talk.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, thank you for your talk. How do you handle the fact that with that kind of approach, the front end will be in charge of maybe or sometimes much more stuff than what it used to do?
So that's not really true, because you can have as many actions as you want. You can improve your APIs just as like a REST API. There's no problem with that. As Apollo or even Relay are awesome frameworks for front end, I think, and the developers I worked with was more than happy to change and to add maybe some logic in the front end, because it's sometimes where it belongs, and all the backend logic will be still here, because you can have the same things.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you for your talk. Okay. I wonder, how do you deal with filtering data on a request level? So let's say you want to get talks which have Ruby in title.
Yeah. So you can add easily arguments to queries. So you can say, for example, in your either you talk here, you just modify the index method to return only the talk with what you want. and you can give it a parameter in your query type here. Here I just send page and per page, but you can even add a search field, for example, and modify the way it's done at this moment.
Okay, but how do you specify it on front-end side? So as a front-end, I want to get only Ruby talks. How do you make a query to GraphQL with this parameter?
Here you can just say, for example, if here I add in my no, not here. Here I add an argument, or just on the field talks, and then I have an argument here called search field, or yeah, and it's a string, and do the boilerplate here, like this one, and what it returns is then here you can just add okay. That's this way. And then you can put it here.
Okay, I get the point. Thank you.
Anybody else? Other questions? Yeah.
Hi. How are validation errors handled in, say, an update request?
Where it's a question. Okay, sorry.
How are validation errors returned in an update request?
So validations are set here. So when there is a bang, it's mandatory. When there is no bang, it's not mandatory. So for the query, and then it's basic Rails validation on the models.
Okay, so the response is just an array of errors, and it's up to the...
What errors we get?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's for example, if when I create a talk and you don't give a title, for example, and it's mandatory here. Not a talk, but for example, a spectator. And you don't have a name. This is what you asked. And I want to create a spectator without a name here. So you have your error here. So your spectator input type is requiring some stuff you don't have it, so it will not create any spectator.
Okay.
So it's for the input type, but after you can have your active record validations that works too. And in the application service I worked here, it's exactly the object.errors.full messages that I send back.
Okay.
If there is any problem, you don't.
Yep. Ici. From my understanding of the JSON API, because I want to understand why you switched to GraphQL.
Mm-hmm.
The JSON API specification, in my understanding, allows you to list the fields that you want and also the inclusions that you want in a query. So I understand that maybe the JSON API gem on Ruby doesn't include that behavior, but I wonder if it's a JSON API specification that goes wrong or that I don't understand that led to have this flexibility over your API call and that you have to switch to GraphQL or that.
I don't know exactly what the specification of JSON API is deeply, but from what I know, if you query one endpoint with fields, you will get the fields you queries. Okay, but you can't query deeply in a big relationship with security filter or a visibility filter as you would like easily. And that's why GraphQL is pretty good, in my understanding.
Okay, we'll take one last question if there is one. No, there are not. Okay, so thank you again for this talk.